some people call the Chicago Sky a poverty franchise because in a lot of ways, like the stuff that they have is subpar to the rest of the league. And yes, the market is great. It seems like players all around the league would love to play with Angel, but at the same time, you have to pair that with the things that you are giving players, especially seasoned players who are like, probably have less days in the future when it comes to basketball than the days previous. They want to be taken care of. They want to be in a good situation. And right now, that's just not really the case for Chicago. And so they really do have to kick it into gear and like finish this build on time and really do the things necessary to make the Chicago Sky an appealing place to be.
Just looking at your social media, notice that you attend a lot of Chicago Sky games. So I'm just fascinated to get your perspective on this team. Despite the struggles this season, as they're sitting towards the bottom of just the league, I think they're still one of the most fascinating teams in the W. So I always want to kind of get, just when we interview experts, just get their opinions on the Sky specifically. So overall, what's been your reaction to this season compared to last season? A new coach. We have Cardoso's and Angel Reese's sophomore seasons to consider as well. There's a lot of change. Certainly this season, a lot of injuries, different aspects of the team has been dramatically changed from previously. So what's been your impressions of this team so far?
I would say this year has been a bit of a struggle, I would say, for the Chicago Sky. Now, we have been in the struggle mode for about 2 years now, so it's not anything brand new, but it's a different vibe this season for the Sky. As you mentioned last year, we had a new coach in Teresa Weatherspoon. We had 2 new fascinating rookies in Angel and Kamilla. We had one of the best players in the world in Kennedy Carter on our team. And there was just a lot of stuff that surrounded the Chicago Sky. A lot of negative talk, a lot of just stuff that was just out there. But the Chicago Sky, when you saw them play last year, even if they lost, which again, the Sky was not that great last year. However, the noticeable difference, in my opinion, between last year and this year is that last year, the team just had a lot more heart and fight in all the games, where you didn't see a ton of blowouts, where you look at this season and you just, we started off the season with 3 blowouts for the Chicago Sky. We kind of got it together a little bit, had 2 fantastic back-to-back wins against Dallas, but then we go to the United Center to play against the Indiana Fever, and then our point guard, Courtney Vandersloot, she goes down, and we proceed to get blown out in that game. And the Chicago Sky this season, right now we're sitting at 7 wins, 17 losses on the season, and it's one of those things where it's been a mix of good and bad, but more on the bad side for the Chicago Sky this year, unfortunately for them. We've seen a handful of pretty good wins, pretty good significant wins. I'm thinking especially about that game about a week or so ago when we beat the Minnesota Lynx. Like, that was a huge, awesome game. But you pair that with severe blowouts against multiple teams this year. The Chicago Sky are one of the worst teams when it comes to taking care of the basketball. Towards the bottom, I believe actually at the bottom when it comes to turnovers this season, right? The Chicago Sky have struggled to score. We're in 12th place in terms of points per game, right? Our offense at times seems very stagnant. And it just seems like we can't figure out ways to consistently get the ball in the post unless it's post-to-post passing. We've seen some success with that, with Angel to Kamilla or to Elizabeth Williams and vice versa. We've seen some good stuff post-to-post, but guards to post, that has been a big struggle for this team. Just overall, we have seen a lot of struggles, and we've seen the players hold their heads down. And when adversity comes in a game, when they get 1 turnover, it turns to 2 turnovers, it turns to 3 turnovers. It just snowballs into a not good look for the team, and what was a decent 10-point game all of a sudden blooms to a 30-point plus loss, right? And so there's some negative stuff that the Chicago Sky need to work on. However, it's not all negative. While the season has not been the best, there still is hope for the squad. Now, not this season. Will the Sky make the playoffs? I don't think so. However, there's hope in the fact that close to 80% of the league is going to be a free agent next year. All the while, Chicago has their 2 cornerstone players locked in for a couple of more years in Angel Reese and Kamilla Cardoso. So that is something that's a huge positive of like, there is still opportunity to really, in the 2026 season, really build around your posts and get players who can absolutely make a difference, get guards who are really good passers to post players, and just get players who can really complement what both Angel and Kamilla can do. That's a possible positive going forward to the future. But this year has been a bit demoralizing, I would say, for longtime Sky fans. I for one, have been a season ticket holder for years and years and years now. And the people I'm around, we're still out supporting, still go to every game, still support. But at the same time, fans are a bit disappointed in specifically some of the moves that the general manager, Jeff Pagliacca, has made to lead the Chicago Sky sort of in this realm of not really having the personnel in place to really make some noise for a playoff push.
Lots of good information there. I want, if you would, can you take us back to before the season? I'm sure it goes without saying that Chicago Sky haven't been meeting fan expectations, but can you remember kind of what you were expecting going into this season for the Chicago Sky? Like what seemed like a realistic expectation?
Going into the season, I really thought that the Sky could possibly make the playoffs. So coming into the season, there was a lot of interesting moves. One, you fire the previous head coach who only had 1 year under her belt in Teresa Weatherspoon. You then hire Tyler Marsh, a longtime assistant coach for the Las Vegas Aces, someone who's highly respected in the league, but someone who does not have that experience as a head coach. You then surround him with, assistant coaches from around the league, including former head coach of the Atlanta Dream, Tanisha Wright, and you proceed, in Jeff Pagliacca, the GM, proceed to make a series of moves. You make the decision not to bring back Kennedy Carter, someone who was a absolute bucket. Now, I understand there's a lot of other stuff that GMs and teams have to think about when it comes to bringing in players, but no one can deny that Kennedy Carter is a fantastic talent, and she was huge for the Chicago Sky. The reason why the Chicago Sky even had a chance to make the playoffs last year was because of Kennedy Carter, and it was because of Angel Reese. And when both of those players kind of went down towards the end of last year, that's when the playoffs didn't ultimately happen. So you decide not to bring her back, even though she was willing to come back if the Sky actually wanted her, but you decide you don't want that. You decide to then make a trade that brings in Ariel Atkins to the Chicago Sky, and we give up our really good lottery pick, and the Sky also makes some decisions to sign a player like Akia Nurse, right? Sign Beck Allen. We make just certain decisions, and then we have the trade last year in the middle of the season that sent Marina Mabry packing, brought in Rachel Banham, and brought in, I'm blanking on her name right now, Mariah Jefferson, there we go, to the team. And there's been a series of moves, and there was a lot of confidence building that the GM, Jeff Pagliacca, was sort of sending to the fans, and basically saying, like, I got this. You all are going to be happy with the season. I have a master plan, and yada, 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 yada. And to be honest with you, I started to think, okay, well, maybe he knows something different about Kia Nurse. Maybe he knows something different about, Mariah Jefferson and Rachel Banham and Beck Allen and, Ariel Atkins. Like maybe he knows something different that we all don't know about these players that makes it seem that they will actually make a real push for the playoffs, right? And so I was thinking, okay, well, maybe he's a genius, okay? Maybe he is. Let's hope that the Chicago Sky make the playoffs. So I thought, okay, maybe they're going to make the playoffs. But my thoughts changed immediately in the first game of the year when we got blown out by the Indian Fever. I was like, yeah, this team doesn't have it. Yeah, this team is not the best. Yeah, maybe, yes, you do bring back Courtney Vandersloot to the team, and that was a huge, awesome thing for the fans because fans love Courtney Vandersloot. However, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, maybe this strategy that you had is not a good one. And as the season has gone on, it's been a continuation of that, where there was hope at the beginning of the season, and basically that hope has been diminished severely. So fans are not very happy, but at the same time, there is a sense of maybe in 2026 the Sky will get it right. Maybe they will make the necessary investments in the front office that entices top talent around the league to actually choose Chicago, because Chicago is a great place to be. Like, it's a fantastic city, a fantastic place to be in the summer. And so players like to be in Chicago. They just don't want to play for Chicago. So can we make the investments necessary from a front office standpoint, from a player amenity standpoint, to actually make this team competitive and build around, again, our two fantastic post players in Kamilla and Angel.
Do you think coming into this season that there was a sense of panic when there shouldn't have been? I was surprised as when they got rid of Teresa Weatherspoon. It seemed the players really liked her. Seems like they're forming something, despite what the record and what they're producing on the court. They're building something. I mean, this takes time. I mean, that's the nature of sports. I mean, it's rare when things turn around immediately. You have to organically create a team. So when they made all these changes, it was quite shocking. Do you know the motivation behind it besides, like, I guess, trying to get better immediately? It has seemed pretty sudden and seems like a panic move when it didn't have to be. I feel like the pieces were already in place for them to, have a significant improvement this season, but yet they made all these changes and now I feel like they're starting beyond square one in a worse spot. I'm just curious, do you have any other insight in terms of what was the mindset of making all of these dramatic moves? It didn't seem like they had to do that.
Well, publicly, the Chicago Sky say that the reason why they decided to move on is because they want to be a playoff contending team and that the Chicago Sky did not make the playoffs. That's what they have basically said. But you're right. It really was panic. And it was I want to say optics move to move away from Teresa Weatherspoon. Last year, there was just a lot of negative talk around the Chicago Sky surrounding Kennedy Carter, surrounding like some of her actions on the court. And to me, as a observer of the fans of the Sky for the entire season, and even before that, it felt like the Sky front office was like, oh, no, there's a lot of negative press around the Chicago Sky, and people don't like us. A lot of people are saying that we're trying to hurt people and yada, yada, yada. So we need to make a dramatic change. Kennedy Carter has to go because Teresa Weatherspoon was supportive of her players. It seemed like the Sky front office thought that, she was a little bit too lax on some of the stuff that went on. So Teresa Weatherspoon has to go as well. Now, was that the right decision? No, it was not. In my opinion, I think part of the reason why the Chicago Sky are so bad this year is because you got rid of all the continuity from last year. Teresa Weatherspoon built something special. When you heard players from the Chicago Sky talk about their head coach last year, they loved Teresa Weatherspoon. It was clear that like the players would run through a brick wall for her. And that's something that players around the league were basically saying as well. You had a lot of players that were like, you know what? I love the fact that Teresa Weatherspoon is with the Chicago Sky. And if the Chicago Sky had a better amenities package for players, a better practice facility and whatnot, I would have picked the Chicago Sky because of Teresa Weatherspoon. She was huge and the fans loved her, right? When I sit behind the Chicago Sky bench, and last year when Teresa Weatherspoon would take the court right before the game, the fans would cheer her on, like as she's walking out. Like, and then I'm not sure if other teams did this. The Sky fans, we didn't do this when James Wade was the coach and whatnot. But players respected her, fans respected her, and we gave her a loud cheer every time she took the court. And the reason why is because she was genuine, she was respected, and she instilled confidence in the players. And that was something to build off of. And so the decision to just get rid of her after 1 year, yes, the Sky didn't make the playoffs, but if Kennedy Carter doesn't miss all those games in the second half of last year, if Angel Reese did not mess up her wrist towards the end of the year, the Sky would have 100% made the playoffs. It was a foregone conclusion that they were heading towards a playoff push in the second half of last year. But injuries happen, things happen, but that's not on Teresa Weatherspoon. So to me, she was a scapegoat for the Chicago Sky trying to improve the perception of them, basically. I think that's kind of what it was. And Tyler Marsh, he was put in a bad position, ultimately. But Teresa Weatherspoon was loved by the players, by the fans, and really by Chicago as a whole. And it was absolutely a panic move, absolutely the wrong move for the Chicago Sky to make the decision to move on. And we're seeing the results of that right now.
So I want to broach this kind of carefully, and you can shoot it down if this is silly to even ask. But do you feel like, in a way, the Sky from last year, in all the changes they made, it was sort of like punishment or reaction to being sort of the foil to Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever? I mean, I know there was physical play, there were flagrant fouls, it was an intense rivalry. I think in a lot of ways, yes, that did bring negative press, but it also brought a lot of eyeballs to the league, as we all know. Do you think that the knee-jerk reaction was also, I'll just plainly say it, reaction to this rivalry with the Indiana Fever?
Yes, I do. I do think that was a huge component of getting rid of both Kennedy Carter and Teresa Weatherspoon. Now, we unfortunately can't get this confirmed because no one in the front office would willingly admit that. But from what we've seen, yes, I do think that getting rid of both of those people was because of the intensity around the games against the Indiana Fever.
It's fascinating too, because it highlights maybe a difference between the WNBA and the NBA in its current state, in that, all those things you mentioned that Coach Witherspoon had, like the buy-in from players, the loyalty, that kind of thing. If you had that for a coach in the NBA, it would take a massive thing to dethrone that coach, so to speak, to move that coach out of town, So I do find that really interesting, that despite the buy-in that it seems like you saw firsthand, she was moved and those massive changes were made. And like you said, I totally agree. I think continuity is a huge factor, an important thing in sports in general, but especially when you have a sport like basketball where it's grinding in and out on the road, several games, just seems like there must have been external factors to have that much favorability and then be moved out.
I think you're 100% right.
Well, that begs the question, then why would Angel Reese want to remain with this organization? I mean, unless there's a front office change, because you're just mentioning the amenities that the Chicago Sky currently have. Correct me if I'm wrong, are, I think, below standard compared to the rest of the league. And I just feel like if what you're mentioning in terms of the continuity, what you're saying about this team being so tied to Teresa Weatherspoon, and ending up the front office worrying about another team, like, that doesn't concern them. The Sky is their concern. That the fan base and the players are not what the Indiana Fever are doing. So I'm just wondering, one, do you think if this continues, Angel Reese can just remains and when she becomes a free agent, she just wants to leave? And then two, what do you think it's going to take for the front office to kind of get in gear? Because we're getting new teams in the W. We've seen the success of the Golden State Valkyries, I think, from an on-court standpoint, and then off the court, just in terms of ticket sales, interest. And then it's continuing with Portland, and we've seen other teams with just rising interest. If they don't really rise to the rest of the league standard, why would Kamilla and Angel want to stay there? I'm very curious, just in terms of what is their long-term future when they're making a key mistake so early in their careers.
Yeah, those are two really, really awesome questions. For the first one, why would Angel want to stay? Well, I mean, that's something that she's going to have to decide when the time comes. Here's the deal: when Angel has been asked about the Chicago Sky, and just about the organization as a whole, she has been very positive, right? She has been seen trying to recruit players to come to the Chicago Sky, both publicly and I'm sure privately. She's probably trying to do the same thing. Like she is doing a really good job in promoting the Sky and promoting all that Sky basketball is. And the way she seems like she's all in with the Chicago Sky. Now she's all in because the reality is she has to be right now, right? Right now she's on her rookie deal. She's tied with this team for a couple of more years. And so whether or not she actually stays on this team will depend on what the front office does in the next 2 years. This is their moment. They have 2026 and 2027. If they don't get their sort of front office stuff in order, if they don't try to make other players believe that the Chicago Sky are serious, well, I think it's not happening. She's not going to stay. I would hope that she stays. I think she's an immense talent that would like Chicago loves her. I think she loves being in the city. So having her stay on this team for her career would be amazing. However, she's interested in being amongst the top players in the WNBA. She's interested in being with a team that has like standards up to par, basically, not subpar standards. Right now, the Chicago Sky, they were voted. There was a vote done by the Athletic where they asked several players a bunch of questions. They asked what team was the worst run organization, and players overwhelmingly said the Chicago Sky. They said it for a reason, because the Chicago Sky, we play at a recreation center in terms of practice at a recreation center where players have to walk past regular senior citizens and whatnot who are trying to get their workout in. A real functioning fitness center that's made for the community, and you have the Chicago Sky practice in there. You have like just not so great amenities. Like even when players are getting added to the squad, when we have a press conference, right? You look at the press conference that Angel Reese had for her introductory press conference, and it was again at the gym that they practice at. They just had like a little backdrop, some tables and some chairs. Like it wasn't festive. It wasn't like this celebratory thing. But then you look at a team like the Indiana Fever, who literally basically rolled out the red carpet for all of the players that they signed. Not even not even just like the big name players, but all of them. They had the red carpet treatment and whatnot. And if you don't even look at the Indiana Fever, you look at the Minnesota Lynx. You just look at other teams in the W, just how they treat little things like press conferences, to what they give players on their birthday, to what they give players when they're celebrating some sort of certain milestone. You compare the Chicago Sky to all the other teams in W, and there is just a vast difference. There just is. But a huge difference between the Chicago Sky and the rest of the league is that the Chicago Sky are not, from what I understand, not owned by a billionaire. Most of the other teams in the W are paired up with their NBA counterpart, and they're owned by a billionaire. The Chicago Sky are not. They're owned by wealthy people, but not billionaire status, from what I understand. They're also not tied to the Bulls. And so the Chicago Sky are in a different position than other teams. But that being said, the stuff that they can do to attract other players is to really kick this facility into gear. Right now, I believe they've already started putting up the walls for a new facility that the Chicago Sky are building, where they won't be at that recreation center, but they'll be a little bit closer to the city. And it's a facility that will have some of the amenities that other teams have. So that's a huge start. And then also, it's just doing all the little things like getting better food for players, right? It's getting better gifts for players. It's having a real facility that players that you can go to celebrate certain milestones, to have the press conferences in a space that looks very nice and whatnot. Like there's just some touches that the Chicago Sky have to do. And then from a general manager perspective and from a front office perspective, I really do think it means paying top dollar for top front office talent.
So it sounds like really the main attraction and appeal of being on the Chicago Sky at the moment is the reliance on that market and that city and enjoying being there, and the chance to maybe be, potentially the face of Chicago sports at the moment. There is, I think, perhaps some opportunity there. When you look at someone like Angel Reese ascending, maybe that's an appealing opportunity.
It's appealing, but it has to be paired with better amenities for players in order for players to actually make the move. Like, for example, there was a chance that maybe, Skylar and NECA, before they chose to go to Seattle, there was a chance that maybe they would come to Chicago, but I would say a huge sticking point to why they didn't decide to choose Chicago, a huge sticking point to why players like a Courtney Williams and Alana Smith decided to move on from Chicago and go to Minnesota, is because of the practice facility. It's because of the various player amenities that these other teams you don't have to worry about. But for the Sky, it's like, man, this is not good. Like, some people call the Chicago Sky a poverty franchise because in a lot of ways, like the stuff that they have is subpar to the rest of the league. And yes, the market is great. It seems like players all around the league would love to play with Angel, but at the same time, you have to pair that with the things that you are giving players, especially seasoned players who are like, probably have less days in the future when it comes to basketball than the days previous. They want to be taken care of. They want to be in a good situation. And right now, that's just not really the case for Chicago. And so they really do have to kick it into gear and like finish this build on time and really do the things necessary to make the Chicago Sky an appealing place to be.
Do you think with this ownership group, do you think they're still interested in owning this team? Things are dramatically going to change, and things are already changing in terms you mentioned with these billionaires. I mean, they're not just having a team just to have one. They want to win. They want to present a great product for their fan base. And I just think the Sky are currently falling behind now. I mean, the price is only going to go up. So I'm just wondering, in terms from a business perspective, do you see them remaining in terms of wanting to own this team, or do you think they'll want to sell it, especially now where they can get maybe a higher price, in this day and age, just due to, the rising price of sports franchises and just the momentum of what's happening and the W specifically? I mean, what do you think the future of the ownership is for the Sky?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure because I can see it going two different ways. Number one, I do see that the ownership group are invested in, like, not just money wise. They're also at the games, right? They're showing their support in that way. They're present. This team, in a lot of ways, they call themselves family, right? And that's that's what they have to hold their hat on. But from the actions that the Chicago Sky ownership group has shown, it's clear that while they love this team, while they support the players and whatnot, it's clear that they're not willing to invest the type of money that other teams are. Like, that's just obvious. Even with the facility that they have that they're building right now, it's still, like, money-wise, it's still less than what other teams are spending on their practice facilities. And the Sky won't even own the facility, right? It's a partnership between the Chicago Sky and the city, the suburb that the facility is going to be in. So it's one of those things that, like, even on a very awesome thing that you're doing with the practice facility, that's not even to the level that it should be, because it should be owned by the team fully, outright, where the Sky could do anything they want, not basically a long-term lease type of deal. Right. And so in the future, I could totally see a situation where the Sky are like, like the ownership group is like, hey, the valuation is through the roof. Maybe we bow out and we sell to a billionaire that can take this team to the future. I could totally see that happening. And if that does happen, I think the Sky would skyrocket, because we just need more investment, more actual money invested in the Chicago Sky, because Chicago is a great city. People would flock here, truly, if we had the amenities that a Minnesota Lynx had, that a New York Liberty had, right? Like, a lot of people would flock here. And so I could see a situation where they sell. Also, I could see a situation where they keep it. And they say, you know what, this is, we're gonna keep this thing. We're gonna keep promoting the Chicago Sky as a family, and we're okay with being at the bottom, towards the bottom when it comes to the tier for amenities, because in the long run, this is great for us and we still love the team. So I can see both happening, and I'm not sure really how it's going to go.
Yeah, it may just depend on timing and how the league booms and how much money they can make off of a sale. If I were advising them, I would not sell right now. I would hold on to it for a couple of years to see that play out. Speaking of which, of course, we have the CBA that everyone's talking about. Just curious, your thoughts on the likelihood of a lockout and kind of some early predictions, what we might see coming our way with that CBA.
Yeah, so I am of the mind that lockout will not happen. I do think they reach a deal by the deadline, which is in October. I absolutely see that happening, and I'm not too worried about it affecting next season. Now, could it? Absolutely. But I do think there's a heavy incentive on both sides, on both the player side and the league side, to get this done as soon as possible, because from a league perspective, right, you are entering an expansion period. You have two teams that are going to be added to the WNBA in 2026. And there's just some stuff that needs to get done in terms of expansion draft, in terms of just fully hammering out those two new teams that the league has to do. And if the CBA expires and they do not get that all buttoned up by the deadline in October, the league is now on the back foot when it comes to solidifying all the stuff necessary to actually welcome these 2 new teams in 2026. And then for the players, I mean, money's at stake. Hey, here's the deal. Like the WNBA, yes, do players deserve more money? Absolutely. But the players rely on the check and stuff that the WNBA offers, right? And so the idea of going past the deadline and heading into free agency, heading into even towards the start of the WNBA season next year without a CBA, I just don't see that happening, because from a player perspective, you want to get your money all buttoned up as soon as possible. So that way, when you're overseas playing, or you're playing in Unrivaled, or you're playing in Athletes Unlimited, you're not worried about, once this is over, am I going to get a check from the WNBA, right? And so I think it behooves both sides to get this stuff situated. So I do think that'll happen before the deadline. And I do think that both sides will be slightly disappointed in the final CBA. But that's how it is, right? You know, it's you give a little bit here, you take, and they give a little bit there. And it's you meet in the middle where both sides are not super happy with it, but they're satisfied. I do think that the players will get more in terms of significantly more, I should say, in terms of cap space for teams and top players getting paid more. I do see that happening. I do see more money given to players on the marketing end. I do see a possibility of the league actually hammering out more in terms of league minimums for teams, where they require teams to have a dedicated practice facility, where they require just certain things that players want. So I do think the players are going to get a good amount of stuff. I don't think they're going to get everything they want, because that's ultimately how negotiations work. You're going to have to give a little bit.
So do you think, I guess my question in all of that, it sounds like compared to how this previously has been set up, the owners are going to need to be willing to pay more. From everything I look at, and with what I mentioned about holding on to the sky, if I were owning them, I mean, it seems like everyone is in a position where they can make more money with this new TV deal coming. Mm-hmm. So I think a lockout would be incredibly harmful. I'm with you. It seems like there are things that I see where people feel almost the opposite, like almost guaranteed there will be a lockout. But from what you're seeing and hearing, do you get a sense that ownership will be willing to work with and negotiate with players some to be able to kind of keep this momentum going for the league?
I think they have to, because when the various teams are looking at their valuations have skyrocketed over the last 2 years. Teams are worth way, way more than they used to be.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason why is because of the players. And so, yes, the owners are going to try to play hardball, but at the end of the day, they can't act like they can't pay these players. They can. The revenue for the league is up. Ticket sales are up. Merch sales are up, right? It's all up. So yes, in the past, have teams struggled in terms of finances, and has the league lost money in the past? Yes. But if we look at all the numbers, they're up. And if we look at this new media rights deal that's about to kick in, that's just another jolt of income. So the money will be there, right? Part of the money is there right now, and the rest will be there come next year with this media rights deal. And so it's one of those things where you can't continue to claim that you're not making any money and you can't pay players more when you can, right? We and WNBA does not open their books, right? So the public can't know specifically where all the money is going and whatnot. And yes, the WNBA historically has been operating on a loss. However, again, we look at the past 2 seasons, we see that increase. We look at the media rights deal, we see that huge increase, and the money will be there in 2026 to pay these players more. In a lot of ways, the money is here right now. And so you can't continue to claim that. So I see the reasoning for owners to sort of like act like they don't have any money. Like I understand that, and act like the league, that the players aren't deserving of more money. I could understand why they would do that, because of course they want to keep as much money in their pockets as possible. I get that. That makes sense. However, the reality of it is that the WNBA is booming now more than ever. Now you are seeing cities clamor to get teams. $250 million for an expansion fee. They're not doing that because the WNBA is a charity. They're doing that because they want to make money. The path is clear for profitability for the WNBA, profitability for these various teams. And I think current owners are fooling themselves if they really think that they can really convince us that they won't be financially benefiting from it, because it's very clear that they will. Guarantee you, if you ask a lot of wealthy people in America, would you want a WNBA team for $250 million? I think a good amount of them would take it. I think it's a great investment for the future. And you can see that by the amount of teams, the amount of cities that are disappointed. Houston's upset. They don't have a team, right? Nashville had a huge campaign to try to get a WNBA team. Candace Parker was backing that and whatnot. They didn't get it. They're upset, right? Denver wants a WNBA team really badly. They're upset they didn't get a team. Like, it's there. Like, the interest is there, and the money is there as well.
Completely agree. We kept you over time, but do you have time for one more question?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm very curious with the length of the CBA. Do you think it might be shorter this time, just in lieu of what's going to happen in the future, just due to all the new teams and all the new stars that are set to come into the league with, I think, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and the rest of that draft class of last year and this year, along with what's going to happen in the future? Do you think in terms of the negotiations, this might be a shorter length so the players have the freedom to negotiate quicker and capitalize on the, I think, guaranteed growth of this league?
Possibly. I think that's a possibility. I mean, even this current CBA was supposed to be longer, but the players, but there was a clause in there where they can opt out early, and that's what they did. I could see a similar situation where there's a specific length for the CBA, but in the CBA language, there's a clause that says, and if either side wants to opt out, wants to opt out early, they have until XYZ date. I could see that happening again. But yeah, from a player's perspective, it makes sense to have this next CBA as short as possible, because the trajectory is just continuing to go up, right? And players are likely to make that bet of, hey, the shorter the CBA, the more money we can make after we get a new CBA, right? But from a team perspective, from an overall league perspective, it makes sense to make that thing as long as possible, to ensure that the monetary commitments that you've made, you don't have to increase those quickly, right? You can have those kind of last. I think it would make sense to have it to be around the length of the media rights deal, the new media rights deal that was signed. However, that's a long time. And so, yeah, it's probably going to be around the same as this one, where the league wants it longer, players want it shorter, but there'll probably be some sort of opt-out clause where they get in early if they need to.
Thank you very much for spending the time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media, your podcast, any upcoming projects you have for the future as well?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So folks can find me on YouTube primarily. My channel is called Quita Love Sports. I also have a Monday through Friday show called Quita in the Morning that starts at 7:15 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. It's a good time. In terms of upcoming projects, well, I was at the All-Star game. I plan to be at the WNBA Finals, covering the games for the channel. And so make sure to rock out with me there. And then once the WNBA season is over, I do cover college sports as well. So all year round, women's basketball, you can go over to Quita Love Sports.
Awesome. Thanks for spending the time. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.